My name is Ernesto Castillo. I'm the Honorary Consul of Belize here in Los Angeles. And tonight I welcome each and every one of you. Every single person in this room tonight is a distinguished guest. And the reason we are here tonight is because we want everyone to know that Belize welcomes you. We welcome you in the area of tourism and investment. We also want everyone to know that Belize also encourage Belizeans and foreign investors to become business partners. Many people here tonight knows a lot about Belize, but many of you may not know enough. So at this time I'd like to take a few moments to tell you a little bit about Belize. Belize is the newest nation on the American mainland, having gained its independence on September 21st, 1981 from the United Kingdom. Bordering the Caribbean coast of Central America, Belize is bounded on the north and part of the west by Mexico, and on the south and the remainder of the west by Guatemala. The area of the mainland and keys is 8,866 square miles. The population is ethnically diverse, including Creole, Mestizos, Caribs. Society includes Chinese, Arabs, and other ethnic groups. Over 50% of the population is under the age of 18. The commitment to democracy and to sustain economic progress has resulted in a long history of peace and stability. Belize remains the Commonwealth of Nations with the Queen of England as a titular head of state. The Queen is represented by the Governor General. The Prime Minister, which is here tonight, is the head of government, whose bicameral parliament is based on the Westminster model. Members of the House of Representatives are elected under universal adult suffrage. As a young independent nation in the Americas, Belize's foreign policy is based on the fundamental principles of peace, sovereignty, equality, and non-interference in the affairs of other states. Respect for human rights. Of particular interest to foreign investors is the fact that Belize enjoy a number of preferential market access arrangements as CARICOM, CBI, CARICAN, and EEC. Belize is divided into 6 districts, with Belmopan as the nation's capital and English as the official language. Spanish is also widely spoken and is taught in primary schools and secondary schools in order to develop bilingualism. Belize's literacy rate is very high. Education is compulsory for children between the ages of 6 and 14, and primary education is free. Most schools are run by churches, some by government. The workforce is highly trainable, and priority is being given to training at the professional and technical levels. That's a little bit of history on Belize. Tonight, our emphasis is on investment, but as I mentioned, we encourage foreign investors to join with Belizeans. And to give you an example, tonight's affair, which is a festive one, was put together by a Belizean and also a foreign investor. I'd like to call on those 2 gentlemen who helped me put this affair together. Our Belizean, Mr. Joe Sanka, and our foreign investor, Mr. Gunnar Dow. At this time, I would like to call up our Belizean, Mr. Joe Sanka. He has a few words to say to you, and I'll ask him. Mr. Sanka, please come on up.
Right Honorable George Price and his cabinet members, Senator, Mayor, and Councilman Farrell. Guests and business associates. First, I must say, Ernie, it's an honor for co-hosting this event with you. Now, it's impossible for me to mention all the names of my business associates, but it shows for itself. They are international consultants, investment bankers, city planners, bankers, mortgage company, insurance, CPA firm. We have a true Belizean, Mr. Mitchell and Mitchell firms, real estate, doctors, supermarket owners, resort and hotel owners. I must say that Belize is on its way to show off itself. So come down to stress-free country and earthquake-free country. Now, we have a lady with us tonight. She is a very special friend of mine, me and my family for the past 15 years. She signed my first loan for $3,000 about 15 years ago. Mrs. Dorinda Henderson, she is the director of the State Department of Employment and Housing. At the request of the Governor, Pete Wilson, who was on a prior commitment, could not be here, Mrs. Henderson, a Belizean and sister of Her Excellency Dame Benita Gordon, has achieved a position of the highest honor with the government of California. Please welcome Mrs. Dorinda Henderson, a Belizean. We are proud of her always.
Thank you very much for that warm applause. It is my pleasure to be here tonight. A very, very special pleasure. The Right Honorable Mr. Prime Minister, honorable members and representatives comprising the Belize delegation, Councilman Farrell, you're always with us, my fellow Belizeans and honored guests. This is truly an evening of reflection, reflecting on where we came from, what we heard along the way, how it influenced where we are tonight. I choose to reflect on an evening, I think late 1940s, early 50s, Mr. Prime Minister, as I walked across the big bridge, the swing bridge, and spoke to one of my friends, and we repeated a phrase, contact or no contact.
That's right.
Now, some of you are too young to know the meaning of that phrase.
But you look so very young.
But you, Mr. Prime Minister, you cannot forget those words. You see, there were charges and even judicial consequences. But then as now, with great odds against you, you developed a plan and you stayed the course. And you encouraged us, and we hung on in there with you. And for that, I thank you. Over the past 25 years, Belize has undergone a tremendous transformation. There has been growth, which has challenged the minds and the resources of Belizeans living abroad, to such an extent that we have formed clubs, organizations, associations, and even a consortium. And we did that to assist our developing country in its growth and its development. And always, irrespective of the heights to which we rose, our hearts were always in Belize, our homeland. Those Belizeans like me who left home when politics meant George Price have been influenced by your 47 years involvement in the field of politics. I bet you didn't think I was counting. You see, You've taught us to aspire for self-actualization and to determine that it will happen. You should be very proud of the impact you've had on our lives. And we, in turn, have imputed all that to the image of Belize. Wherever we go and whatever we do, we represent the dignity of our homeland, the integrity of its government, and respect for legal process. These qualities have caused us to assimilate into the economy of any host country in which we choose to live. And we've become successful citizens in all of the professions, the trades, industries, and yes, even as leaders in this government. We market Belize just by being Belize-ish. That's the word. Folks want to visit our country because they see in us a profile other nations hope for in their nationals. And it's because of you, Mr. Prime Minister, who helped to shape our earliest political outlook. You see, you first told us to hunger for progress and to question our leaders. You told us that for any endeavor to succeed, it must have a good business plan. And you always use those words, a good business plan. And most of all, you challenged us that wherever we go, don't ever forget Belize. You told us to uphold the traditions which make it the land of the free and the home of the brave. And in your own business plan as Prime Minister of Belize, you pledged to us economic development as a way not just to alleviate the economic hardships at home, but to carve out a niche for us and our homeland in various organizations, such as the Organization of American States. And for that, we thank you. You taught us to widen our perspective to the entire hemisphere and to remove the limitations of social injustice. You chose the mixed economy with socio-economic benefits for Belizeans at home, abroad, and yet to be born. You have pushed for increased exports and the lessening of dependency on imports to address the balance of trade and foreign debt. And while other Central American states were embroiled in armed conflict, you chose peace. And because of you, today, Belize continues to be a tranquil haven of democracy. And while you've always said, come back to Belize, many of us were very concerned there would be no place for us at home, and we wouldn't be like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. But we can now allay those fears because of the land reforms at home. And I think that 197 Belize Californians have found lots at home and are building their homes, and I'm on the way. Mr. Prime Minister, my job as Director of the California State Department of Fair Employment and Housing vests in me the authority to investigate, adjudicate, and to prosecute as necessary to protect and enforce the civil rights of all Californians. To become so authorized, I was first appointed by a governor, and then confirmed by a Senate subcommittee, and then approved by the full Senate House. I manage a budget larger than the budget of some countries. In fact, if California were a country, it would be the 8th largest economy in the world. And I am the civil rights chief of the state of California. You should be very proud of me. Prime Minister remembers when I was a little girl, and my mother had a farm up the road from his, 22 miles. And in the evening, we'd stand out on the side of the road, and I was barefooted and tattered. And he would stop and pick us up in his vehicle so that night wouldn't catch us on the road. And he'd bring us down to town with our produce. And that's why I keep chiding him that he should be very proud of what I've become, because along the way he would challenge me of what I could become.
That is true.
I thank you for the impact you've had on my life, that I chose to be what I am. And so it is no surprise that I was chosen to represent California's governor here tonight. California's governor knows about Belize because of me, because of my behavior, because of my attitude, and because of the contribution I make to his mandate. We are most pleased that you, Mr. Prime Minister, chose to revisit California. California is a trend setter. The best of things happen here. And unfortunately, the worst of things happen here too. And we hope that you will come back to visit us and will allow us to host you in Sacramento, the capital. And since Governor Pete Wilson could not be here tonight, I'm most honored to present you with a letter and a plaque bearing the Great Seal of the state of California. Governor Wilson has touched the lives of all Belizeans, although you don't know it, because he supported the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, which has brought amnesty for so many of us. Governor Wilson wishes you and the Belizean delegation a successful venture in California, and Godspeed on your way back. And Mr. Prime Minister, please come back.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize how she would grow to be so great.
Dorinda, we are very proud of you. Let's have a big hand for Dorinda Henderson. Mr. Joe Santa. At this time, I'd also like to call on our genuine foreign investor who also contributed tonight and assisted in making tonight a very successful night for Belize and foreign investment. Let's call on Mr. Gunnar Dahl.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
You probably wonder how a good-looking young man from Sweden winds up as an investor in Belize. I think the only reason why Ernesto asked me to talk to you tonight is if a dumb speed can make it down there, you know anybody in this group can become millionaires down there. If you don't mind, I think it might interest you a little bit how this all came about. And I'm not going to take too much time on this. But my father in Sweden was a stonemason. We lived in a house where we had no heat. There was one stove in the whole house that heated up that house. In the winter time, I woke up sometimes, the hair was frozen, and beside my bed, I used to collect books about the South Sea Island, about the palm trees, and about the beautiful beaches and everything else. And I said to myself, one of these days, that's where I'm going to go. Anyway, I was fortunate somebody sponsored me to school. I became an optometrist. I came to America in 1948, and I've been over here practicing. I had 5 offices which I retired about 12 years ago. At that time, I decided that now I want to do something that I want to do for myself. I want to become an entrepreneur. I didn't know how it was spelled, but I figured that I'm going to have to try somewhere along the line. Anyway, there was a couple coming from Sweden, and they told me about a floating hotel that was going to be built down in Singapore, and they needed money. And I had been fortunate enough to learn something about investment, and I said, maybe I can raise a few bucks for these guys. So I made contacts up in Canada, and we formed a corporation in Australia called the Barrier Reef Holding Company, and we raised $35 million to build a floating hotel. $35 million we raised to build a floating hotel, 200-room hotel, down in Singapore. When I was down in Singapore, I invited approximately 30 of the leading hoteliers in the world to come down and take a look at this miracle. And I had some very nice replies, but one of the letters I sent out was to an attorney friend of mine in Houston, Texas. And he came back with an answer. He said, I know a place who needs a floating hotel to really put the country on the map. The name of that country is Belize.
Belize.
And you know, this is 6 years ago, you know what I said? Where the hell is Belize? And lately, for some reason or another, when I talk about Belize, it seems that doesn't come up so much anymore. Everybody seems to know something. They've seen it on television, heard about on the radio about Belize. Anyway, he was interested. There was a group down in Houston, Texas, Mr. Walter Mischer, Mr. Paul Howard, you probably know Mr. Prime Minister. Walter Mischer, Paul Howard, Malcolm Barnaby, the former ambassador. We met down there. Nothing became of that meeting, but I became very curious about Belize. I read as much as I could about it, and I was fortunate about 6 years ago to make my first trip to the country. And we flew in by private airplane, the Cessna 411. We landed in Mexico, and we landed at the old airport down in Belize, which wasn't a very pretty place. So the first greeting at that old airport, by the way, they have a beautiful new airport now, so don't worry anymore. So I came there, and I spent the first 3 nights in Belize City, and then somebody said, you're going to come to the beautiful island of Ambergris Key. When I got aboard that airplane and headed out over the Asia blue water, I could see this was the island I've been dreaming about when I was a little kid in Sweden. So we landed in St. Peter town, and we checked into one of the local hotels down there, and I walked up and down the beach, and I felt I was in paradise. The temperature down there was between 78 to 82 degrees. There was this beautiful breeze from the ocean, the palm trees, the coconut. I could see all of those things that I visualized in my dreams so many, many years ago. To make a long story short, I also met the gentleman out there who runs one of the local hotels. His name is Ramon Nunes. And Ramon Nunes and I became the closest of friends. And we have now formed a real estate and development company out on Ambergris Key together. We are opening our own office in approximately 1.5 months. We already have about 60 listings. And my wife, Frances, and I have returned at least 6 times now. We purchased a marvelous parcel right on the ocean south of Victoria House out there, and we are planning a future down there that we look forward to, God willing, Dr. Blue, that we will have a marvelous, wonderful life in Belize. I have applied for a work permit down there. You have to be careful about these things. But anyway, we have come to the point. One morning, I'm an early riser. I was there about 5:30 in the morning, out by Ramon's village, and there was a young man standing there, and he says, "Good morning, sir." And I said, "Good morning." And he says, "My name is David." I said, "My name is Gunnar." And he says, "Aren't you going to school?" And he says, "No." He says, "I can't go to school." I said, "Why can't you go to school?" He said, "Well, my family is a poor family." He says, "You want to go to school?" He said, yes. He said, you're going to go to school later. So I've been fortunate enough for the last 2 years to sponsor him to school down there. And he is now #1 in his class. Oh. And I can tell you one thing. This is an indication of what a person can do down there. We are now buying some commercial parcels down there. There are so many things that can be done in this country. There are so many opportunities. I have about 30 or 35 people here tonight. I don't know, by hook or crook or something, I managed to get them here. And I tell you, some of these people have really, there were 9 people that came with me down the last time. Here's one gentleman, and he went diving twice a day for 9 days. So, believe me, this is a country I wish I was, well, about 40 years younger. Francis and I, we would have probably, I don't know what to say. I know that after a while, the host for the evening, Ernesto, is going to hand out a little form that he wants you to fill in, what your interest is in the country. If you can make a contribution to this country, whether it's in the form of teaching people how to repair automobiles, anything. One day I had a pleasure of meeting with Saeed Musa, who unfortunately couldn't make it here. I thought I would be able to spend about 5 minutes with him, and I had about 15 things I want to talk to him about. Everything I said, yes, yes, Gunnar, yes, Gunnar. And toward the end I said to him, Mr. Musa, what is it that the country really needs? And he said, Gunnar, we need a canning factory, and we need a golf course. So, if there's somebody in here who would like to build a canning factory in Belize and a golf course, I know it's wide open. So, with that, I think I better finish, and I appreciate that you gave me the opportunity. I'd like at this time to ask another gentleman here. I made a very minor investment. This gentleman has made a major investment in Belize, and he has become a real close friend. I want to call on Dr. Barry Duke. You can do it.
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, it's very hard to follow Gunnar. He's a true master of ceremonies. I first found out about Belize about 2.5 years ago. I'm a doctor, and I was reading a medical journal, and there was a little ad in it that said, would you like to escape from the anxiety of Los Angeles and find paradise? Would you like to own your own oceanfront parcel, your own island, whatever? Call this number. And of course the number was 0115012. It was about 86 numbers, and I called them, and you don't know who you're going to get, but we actually got someone who picked up the phone and said, Belize real estate, whatever. We trekked down to Belize. It was a trek. We brought 15 or 16 people and about 37 suitcases. We arrived at the international airport. We got out of the big plane. We schlepped, which is a Hebrew colloquialism. We schlepped our 15 or 18 suitcases. They pushed a few little planes out. They lined us up, all 15 of us, and they looked at me, they looked at my wife, and they said, okay, you are in that plane, and you, and they kind of looked at our weight, and they divided us up. When I looked at the plane, I wanted to fly with Monsignor because I wanted to get to Ambergris Key. I think if anyone's making it to the Key, it's going to be someone that flies with Monsignor. So I flew with Monsignor. Our suitcases flew with some other people. A few hours later, all the suitcases, all the people arrived. We reassembled, got to our room. Absolutely loved the place. We brought my daughter there, who happens to be here tonight. She was 8 years of age at the time. At about 10 o'clock at night, our first night in Belize, my daughter said to me, Dad, I don't feel good. I have pain in my side. I said, Melanie, I said, Miriam, what is the problem? She said, Dad, I don't have pain in my right side. I happen to be a surgeon. I laid her down in bed. I felt her side, and I said to my wife Kathy, I said, our daughter is having an acute appendicitis. Spoke to Monsignor. Monsignor said, well, look for the local doctor, the local hospital. We're on Ambergris Key. It's 10 o'clock at night. I went out, I asked the innkeeper, where is the local hospital? I said, we have no problem. I'm a surgeon. All I need is an operating room. We roused someone from the Lions Club, the clinic. He gave a push here. He agreed with me. We went to the airstrip, and someone came along who was flying the wings of hope. The wings of hope. I said to Monsignor, we really need prayer now. The lady that flies the wings of hope walked out, and she says, well, and now you have to understand, this is an airstrip, no landing lights, no control tower, 11 o'clock at night. She said, I'm sorry, I don't fly at night. I said, my daughter has acute appendicitis, her appendix is going to rupture. What did we do to deserve this? Why is this happening to me? All of a sudden, this young fellow ran up with a tank top on, looked like he was about 14 years of age. He said, Dr. Lou, I have experienced it flying at night. They push the wings of hope out and say, four-passenger Cessna. My wife gets in the back. We had a 2-month-old daughter with us, besides my 8-year-old. I sat in the front with the pilot with his tank top. He had a crew cut, and he's sitting there and he's revving the engine. And we look down the runway. You see nothing. It's pitch black. Pitch black. Again, I'm Jewish. My wife is Catholic. I'm holding the rosary. I'm saying the rosary. I was converted that night. Take off into the pitch black. This is 11 o'clock now. We're in the pitch black. See nothing. I mean, I was flying to my doom. This was my absolute doom. I look over at him, and he's got his hand up like this. He says, we're in good shape. We're fine. I said, where are you flying? He said, you see that little light? That's the international airport. I said, they were expecting, absolutely, they're going to put on the runway lights. It's going to be real easy. And I felt a little calmer. We're heading towards the international airport. We approach it. There are no runway lights. There's no landing lights. There's nothing. He says, it's okay. I don't need them. I'm He's flying over treetops. I have the rosary. I have the beads out again. I'm learning the rosary very fast here. We land on the runway. The first thing that happens is the British come out with an armed personnel carrier, trying to see, is this an invasion from Guatemala? And the night watchman finally woke up and came out with a shotgun to aid the British personnel. This is all true. This is all true. Finally, we convinced them they were not invaders from Guatemala. This was not a preconceived invasion. This was not the advanced landing party. This was myself, my wife. My daughter had this acute appendicitis. An ambulance arrives from the Belize City Hospital with the lights flashing off and on because there was a short circuit in the ambulance, and as it was driving, the lights were flashing off and on. So we jumped into the ambulance. We're sitting in the back, and the attendants were stamping out a fire in the front of the ambulance, which was causing the lights to go off and on. We get to the cab. Well, we made that ride in about 15 minutes with those bumps, and my daughter writhing in pain, and I'm saying, my God, her appendix is ruptured. We get to the hospital. We get to the casualty area. This was on a Friday night. The casualty area in the city hospital in Belize, which was kind of difficult to comprehend. We go inside, and they put my daughter in a bed. They poked around a little bit. And a very, very good doctor turned up, Dr. Gonzalez. They drew blood from her finger, and they said, we'll do a white count and see what it looks like. A white count here takes 5 or 10 minutes. I asked when it would be ready. He said 9 hours. So I said, we will come back in the morning. I said, I will watch her. I will observe her very carefully all night. He agreed. We came downstairs, we got into a taxi, and we said we'd like to find a place to stay for the night. Cab driver put us in the cab. We started driving through Belize City. He said, "Would you like a room with a bath in the room or in the hall?" I said, "It's 2 o'clock in the morning. This is our first night in Belize. All I want to do is find a bed, and I want to go to sleep for the night, and I want to wake up in the morning, and I hope my daughter is going to be alive, and I wondered what we're doing here, what all this means." So we went to the Golden Dragon Hotel or Motel, and they kind of led us through a back alley, and I was kind of a little concerned, but we finally got up to our room, got into our bed. The 4 of us are sleeping in one bed, myself, my wife, my 2-month-old daughter, and my 8-year-old daughter. I thought I had acute appendicitis. We wake up in the morning. A pain has miraculously gone away. We had a wonderful breakfast, and everything since that time has been uphill. I'll make this very brief. Since that time, we have gone back to Ambergris Cay at least 12 to 15 times. We have bought property where we were going to build our little dream house. The real estate broker told us that if we buy property, he would refund the cab fare. He still has not refunded the cab fare.
I was not the realtor, did you?
We have also gotten involved in purchasing the Belizean Hotel, which we're in the midst of upgrading. I have led many other people down there, many investors. I have my partner, Dr. Agribus, here. If you could stand, Dr. and Mrs. Agribus. Brother-in-law, Dan Evenoff, and Leslie Evenoff. Dan has given up a lucrative position in Los Angeles to follow me on my folly. Correct? Correct. I have my friend Skip Courtney here, who owns 25% of the Belizean. Is that true? My beautiful wife, Kathy. My physician assistant, Dr. Schlepper, who works with me. I have led many, many people to follow me. I'm extremely excited about the country. The story I told you is true. In spite of all this, I find it a wonderful place. I am absolutely enamored with the Prime Minister. I think he's the most spiritual person I've met in many years. Next to my Monsignor, I revere both of these people sitting at the table tonight. They've guided my life. We're very excited about Belize, and what more can I say?
Thank you very much.
Another big round of applause for our foreign investors and Belizean entrepreneurs. I'd just like to mention that this year, Belize is also building a brand new hospital. Tonight I'd like to introduce to you members of the delegation. And I'd like to start by asking our Chief of Staff of the Prime Minister's Office to please stand up, Mr. Leroy Jacobs. We have a Minister of State in the Offices of Foreign Affairs, Economic Development and Education, Mr. Villo Marin. We have a mayor of one of our bigger cities in Belize, the mayor of Dangriga, Ms. Sylvia Flores. We have our Attorney General and also Minister of Tourism and Environment, the Honorable Mr. Glenn Godfrey. And of course our Commander-in-Chief, Prime Minister, Father of the Country, Founder of Independence, the Right Honorable Mr. George Cato Bright. The purpose of this meeting tonight is to encourage foreign investment, and as we mentioned, we have emphasis on foreign investors becoming Belizean partners. Tonight there are many people here. There's over 150 people in this room tonight. And I know that each and every one of you would like the opportunity to speak with the Prime Minister and other members of the delegation. But following tonight's meeting, you can speak to them, but of course with this many people here tonight, it will be impossible to get all your answers. So what we have here tonight is a form that each one of you will receive to fill your name, company, address, phone number, fax number, your business interest, and any comments you would like to make. And I know that the Prime Minister himself is accustomed to answer every letter he receives. But also, the Department of Economic Development will address all your inquiries, and Belize will become one of the countries that you will be interested in, and I'm sure will become an investor in also. To become an investor in Belize, we encourage foreign investors to go to Belize, to take a look at our paradise, our beautiful paradise by the sea, our paradise that's full of natural resources, and those natural resources we're committed to preserve and keep intact. With that in mind, I'd like to call on our Minister of Tourism, Attorney General, and also Minister of Environment to tell you a little bit about Belize and also about ecotourism. The Right Honorable Mr. Glenn Godfrey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Right Honorable Prime Minister, my friends, Belizeans and foreign friends. I think absolutely right to say that 5 years ago you mentioned Belize and people would have said, where is Belize? That has changed dramatically, I would say, over the last 2 years. Just before leaving Belize, I was browsing through a Time magazine, and of course there in the travel section was a large article on Belize. Then I got on the airplane, and on the in-flight magazine, the cover story is about Belize. This is Taka, their in-flight magazine called Aboard, or Abordo, depends on what language you speak. As soon as I get here, I get a call from my office to say that Condé Nast has a major article on Belize, which it all goes to show it depends on what market you're appealing to. So it's a disgrace that we tore down the whole airport. It was so lovely. And I'll go to the store and I look for the article, the magazine stand, but it is in the June issue, and it's a little late over here. The magazine is a little late getting over here, so they only have the May issue. I haven't seen it myself, but I hear it's a good article. And then there are 2 other travel magazines. There's Caribbean Life and Travel and Islands. And although Belize is not an island, there's an article on Belize, an island. and I pick up the Caribbean magazine, and although Belize is not quite in the Caribbean, there's an article on Belize in the Caribbean. So I think everybody knows now, as far as touristically, where Belize is. Belize is in fact a hot product right now. And I think that that has come about by a number of the coincidence of a number of factors. But the 2 most important is, one, the increasing interest in environmental protection all over the world, in unspoiled places, and getting back to nature. That is a rapidly expanding market. And the other thing is that as a result of the hard work of the Prime Minister for several years, who stood firmly against rejecting those large touristic products, those touristic developments that he felt was inconsistent with environmental protection, the huge hotels, the casinos, that sort of mass tourism development. He was firmly set against that, and I think time has proved him right. That now we have a product where we can attract a very, very upscale market, and we have been attracting an extremely upscale market. We can look more at the value of the clientele than at volume. We've seen the difficulties that places who have gone into mass tourism are experiencing now. Overbuilding, the drop in hotel rates. And it is our intention to continue that process. Belize is not interested, and I say that very firmly, we're not interested in the mass tourism market. We're interested strictly in the ecologically sustainable ecotourism trade. We have a large competitive advantage in that area. Costa Rica is perhaps our closest competitor, but without being biased, I've been to Costa Rica. They have a fantastic infrastructure, but what is left of their environment is unfortunately not as much as you would want. 60% of our market is, of course, based on the reef and things associated with the reef. It is basically, as Ramon's is, geared towards the scuba industry. We have the largest barrier reef in the Western Hemisphere, and probably the largest healthy reef in the world. And that is why so many people, so many divers would go to Belize and even dive, say, twice a day for 9 days. I don't do much scuba myself, I'm a snorkeler. But the people who are interested in scuba are very, very desirable clientele. They go out there and they knock themselves out all day and they don't give any trouble at night. So you don't have to be concerned about policing them at night or having them drink too much. They can't drink. They're not supposed to drink if they're going diving the next day. And that goes for bird watchers, which is also another large part of our clientele. They tend to be older people and therefore wiser, we all hope. They tend to be well educated. They tend to be well heeled. And of course, if you're going for a small market, if you're going for a small hotel, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, you must charge a higher fee, because a small hotel will not make it on the same rate that a large hotel can make it because of the economies of scale. We have jaguar reserves, we have butterfly reserves, we have monkey reserves, and more than 50% of the rainforest, of the land, still has forest cover. So you're dealing with a very, very pristine product. To keep it that way, the basis is planning. And we're very, very big on planning and master planning. And we feel that without that, we could not preserve the environment the way we wanted it to. And if we do not preserve the environment, then we lose our attraction. So we are not looking so much at rapid developments, so much as we're looking at sustainable development. We feel that, and again, tourism has developed slowly compared with the other destinations, but we do not feel that that is a disadvantage. We think that it is better to take your time and do it properly than to rush it and spoil everything. We are in the process now of, for instance, creating a development plan for the reef and the marine areas, the coastal zones, that will zone that area and determine what type of development will be allowed in each area. There will be areas, of course, where no development whatsoever will be allowed. There will be areas that will target mainly the scientific, that will allow only scientific work, some that will allow only limited ecotourism, and some that will allow fishing and other types. And I think that will benefit everybody, because it hardly makes any sense for you to invest a large amount of money in, say, a first-class resort and have somebody build something next to you that will degrade the entire area. Nobody benefits from that. Similarly, we are in the process of planning the development of the rest of the country to limit the size of hotels, the densities, and perhaps prohibit developments within certain areas. We've seen the example of some African countries who had beautiful parks, beautiful wilderness areas, and had little lodges near those areas that were doing very well. They were the hunting lodges and visitors lodges. And then they got greedy and started building these huge hotels, and then the game disappeared, and then the big hotels left, and then the small hotels collapsed. So nobody turned out to be a winner. You kill the goose that laid its golden egg. We want to avoid that, and we've said that in the interior and on the outer islands, which are very delicate, we would like to emphasize small, upper scale development. We also feel that it's crucial for development to occur on a joint basis with Belizean participation. And we stress that because we've seen how tourism can go bad when there's alienation in the industry. Right now, you can go to Belize, you'll be met by an unspoiled people, very warm, very friendly. Those people who are directly involved in the industry and who get an economic benefit and who participate, and Belizeans participate in the industry now, all the way from proprietors of hotels, all the way down to busboys and waitresses, and we'd like to keep it that way. We would not want a situation to develop where the top of the industry is controlled by foreigners and Belizeans are relegated to the inferior parts. That is best done, we feel, by joint participation, and it has nothing to do with any prejudices or otherwise. We feel that that is healthy for the industry, and so we encourage it, and we make available in such circumstances concessions and assistance to those industry that involve genuine Belizean, those enterprises that involve genuine Belizean participation. And certainly I feel that the presence of Belizeans on your managing team will enhance your chances of success, because the touristic product is environment and culturally sustainable. You certainly need somebody on your team that will make it that way. That does not, of course, preclude the sole foreign ownership. That's a matter of choice, but we do encourage joint participation. So, as I said, the important thing for you to, we do not want to mislead. We do not want you to feel that we're interested in the type of development that you see at Cancun. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't want to knock that, but we don't feel it is appropriate to Belize. We feel that smaller scale type of development, particularly in the interior or on the mainland, certainly in Belize City, we've seen the larger hotels develop, and we welcome that, because Belize City and perhaps Corozal in the north and maybe the area around Anguilla in the south would serve as mass tourism zones, areas that people come into, and then you use that as a hub to get them into the interior. But we don't want you to feel that we're interested in the sun and sand and sea fun set. We're not particularly interested in that. We're interested in more thoughtful, as the Condé Nast article described it, the more perceptive traveler. That is almost a necessity. We're a very small population, 180,000. We're getting close to 250,000 tourists right now, and if that gets out of hand, we'll be swamped. We'll lose the very things that have made Belize attractive, so we prefer to concentrate on quality rather than quantity. The important thing is to have contact with the government. You know what the ground rules are, what we're interested in, what type of image we're trying to project. Those investors that are interested in that certainly have a place. There we can work closely together so that we can define what type of development is appropriate to what areas. As of now, the plan is still in the beginning stages, but we can give a general indication to you. As long as the development, as I said, is sustainable, as long as it does not degrade the environment, because we see the environmental protection as important, I would say, as the development itself. So with those things in place, I think that if you're a serious investor, long term, you're looking at the long term, that there is certainly a place there for you, and we welcome all investors. We're certainly open to discuss anything with you that we feel will benefit both yourself and the country. So thank you very much for listening.
Mr. Glenn Godfrey. As he said, we encourage foreign investors to join partners with Belizeans. We place great emphasis on preserving our natural resources. Along with having two co-hosts to make this night successful and very positive, we also have a team that worked with us, with the Consulate of Belize, and that assisted with bringing the Prime Minister here. And at this time, I would like to call on them to please come forward and again to help me pass around to you this sheet here that you guys can fill out. I'd like to call on them, and as they walk up towards me, I will call your name. So please come on and let's make sure that each person get a sheet. Everyone, you know who you are. Just come on up. I see right here we have Ms. Laverne Christie, Mr. Clifford Palacio. Just make sure each person from each table gets one. Mr. Burley Reed. We have Ms. Margaret Reed. Mr. Arhonia. We have Mr. Delvitt Richreed, which is our press agent out here. Just fill it out. Each question that you have will be answered. Every inquiry will be met. We have two major things coming up yet. We have the Prime Minister, which will address you. We also have some very detailed information that we will provide to you tonight. Information that will give you all the details and the different type of investment, concessions, opportunities, and that we have Mr. Reed. He's quite fast. So please fill out the information. Since tonight you can't speak at length too much with the Prime Minister or the Minister of Tourism, but of course, following this event, you'll be able to speak with each one of the delegates. The government of Belize fully realizes the importance of ensuring a healthy investment climate in order to attract investment by both the local and foreign investors. Investments are welcome, which result in an increase in production, domestic income, employment, foreign exchange earnings, or savings, a diversification of the economic base, and the transfer of technology and skills. The government believes that a dynamic and harmonious partnership between the public and private sectors will provide an era with great economic opportunities. Government recognizes the absolute need for the private sector and is committed to supporting a socially just market economy that stimulates and rewards initiative, efficiency, competitiveness, productivity, and innovation. So you can fill this form out anytime between now and the end of this function. But most of you I know are waiting very patiently on the Commander-in-Chief. You would like to hear from our Prime Minister. And at this time, if you all pay close attention, I would like to call on our Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Mr. George Cadle Price.
Our Honorary Consul General of Belize, the representative of Governor Wilson, Mrs. Henderson, Councilman Bob Faria, our distinguished guests and fellow Belizeans. Superlatives about Belize. It has the largest barrier reef in the Western Hemisphere. It's the second largest in area country of the Caribbean community after Guyana. It has 8 languages. What country, or what other countries would have 8 languages? We have 4 or 5 cultures, and it's a good country. And I'm glad you know where it is, and it's not like in the old days when London appointed a colonial secretary to go to Belize. He looked in the geography, the atlas, to Africa. He thought Belize was in Africa. It was then British Honduras. And before coming here, and I'm grateful to the organizers to bring these potential investors and our fellow Belizeans, and to the Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Ralph Fonseca, I said, Minister, what can I tell these potential investors that I should tell them? And he wrote a little paper which I'll go over it it won't take too long. It says here, our administration works the mixed economy, the public sector, the private sector. This formula demands that government works very closely with the private sector within a setting of respect for market forces while insisting on social justice. We provide the infrastructure, the order and the legislation necessary for orderly distribution and efficient production. Then we step aside and allow the private sector and labor to produce. And this has worked very well. In the last budget speech 2 months ago, we announced a healthy surplus after recurrent and domestic capital expenditure. Our foreign reserves have grown by 39%.